just jumping on, welcome to the Influencer Journey Show. My name is Suzanne Hart. This is my girl, Taria Hodge. And our topic today is Start with Why, how to make your program irresistible, how to message it in such a way that people are like, whoa, I need to find out more. And this is such a skill. And I will say to you that it's such a skill that most people have not mastered. And I know for myself, Tria, when I met people who had mastered the skill before I understood this whole concept of Start with Why, I'd always wonder, what on earth do you do? Like, why is it? Because it seemed like they could sell and connect with ease. I remember watching some people do a sale and I'd be like, okay, so what just happened? What just happened?
Yeah.
Like, why? How did that happen? Or you'd watch certain people and they'd be magnetic, or people would follow them, and all these different things. And most people would say, "Oh, they're just naturals." Yeah, they're just naturals. I'm here to tell you, some of them are naturals, but others have learned a skill set that when you get it is so silky, so amazing that you're like just like, oh yeah, this is it. This is my jam right here. This is the thing. And if you want to have fun and more fun, this is it.
I absolutely love this because, like you said, when you see people who understand it and they execute it well in their marketing, it seems like butter. But this is the undercutting thing. It comes from them, is part of what we call your emotional branding. And so it becomes easy because it's a part of you and it just exudes in everything that you do, from your sales copy to your social media conversations to your offline conversations when you speak on stages, because it's truly who you are and the reason why you decided to start your business in the very first place. And as I'm sitting here thinking about you, I remember the first time I heard the story behind of the brand Tom's shoes.
Mm.
So I don't know how many people are familiar with Tom shoes, but when I first heard that story, I was just like, wow, this is so amazing. The heart of the brand shined through, and it became more than just selling shoes. Their
Mhm.
big why, their social mission to give back, and what they stood for in the marketplace really shined, and it separated them from everybody else in the marketplace who sold shoes or who sold that type of product. So definitely understanding your why and being able to communicate your why is a game changer.
Mhm. Mhm. So this is the big question. I'm sure everybody's like, how do you find your why?
Mm,
Right? How do you find your why? And for me, I remember when I would do these exercise and people would ask me, well, why, like they tell you find your why. And I'd be like, I want to make some money. That's what I want to make money. And and then they go, no, that's not it. Go deeper.
mhm,
And I'd go, oh well, I want to be less stressed. And they'd go, well, go deeper. And I would be
mhm,
answering these questions. And still it landed kind of sterile. Does that make sense?
mhm,
Like it just landed like, hmm. And when I started getting into speaking and I started using storytelling, that is when I understood the power of
mm,
why. And so when people go, well, how do you find your why? What I tend to tell people is think back to before you started your business. Think back. Take yourself way back. And think of the pain that you were experiencing at that time, the struggle, the frustration, the what was not
mhm,
working, the whatever it is. And then from that place, Look at what you're saying to yourself and what you deeply desire. And oftentimes there is a story there,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I remember the day I was at work so tired that I couldn't climb the 4 steps, fighting tears, and so frustrated and angry because I thought I'd done everything that I was supposed to do. I've 7 years of post-secondary education. I have 2 degrees. I went to work in my profession. I climbed the proverbial ladder, hit my head on the ceiling. People told me there was nowhere to go. And the place that I was supposed to go, I didn't want to go because all I knew was more work, not enough pay, and that was it. And I had this burning desire to be free. I had
Mm-hmm.
this burning desire to live life on my terms. I also realized, Taria, that I was in these, I call these boxes. And if you've worked with me, so you know how my mind works. I
Uh-huh.
would invent something. Oh, we can do this, we can do that. And every time I would tell someone, well, there's a better way or there's a different way, they'd say, no, your job description is in this box.
Mm-hmm.
And I just wanted to be free and live outside the box and be able to create things that moved and touched and inspired people. I wanted people to be self expressed.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted people to be able to put their passion into the world. And in that moment was when I had that, this is not it.
Yeah.
And so what drives me is the memory of living small,
Mm.
of knowing that I'm not sitting in my gifting and that people are putting a bracket around my gifting and wanting to live a larger life,
Yeah.
wanting to do the things I want. And so when I sit down with clients and I talk through that story and I listen to them, I hear a version of my story back.
Yeah.
And I go, that's why. That is why.
Mm-hmm.
And what I've learned is when we tell it to people in story, they go on this picture journey
Yeah.
of emotion that has them go, yeah, yeah, yeah. That's why. That's it. That's it. And it's hard to articulate, but stories just paint it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, I love it. And one of the things that definitely stood out for me as I started to take a look at this piece, the thing that I thought was the why wasn't really the why. And so,
Often the case.
or you can expand, on the why to make it bigger. So for me, even looking at my journey, you said, what is the thing that encourage you to start your business? And I think as entrepreneurs, we all have that vision of, sugar plums dancing in our heads, the entrepreneurial freedom. But what does it really take, to do that? And as I started on my journey, I realized that there were a lot of things that I didn't know and things that I were required to learn, things that I didn't even think that I could learn how to do. And as I started to go through the process for myself, and I realized, oh my gosh, I can find a way to do this. I can learn this. Things that I were afraid of, I can now do. And the more I express that and show that and have those, tell those stories around those things, people started to raise their hand and say, you know what, I'm challenged in those areas too. One of the biggest things that I talk about is technology. I look at myself sometimes and I just smile because I remember when I was deathly afraid of technology. I remember when I couldn't even turn on the button. I couldn't find a button to turn on the computer. And people didn't think that I would make it on my job. You're very good. You're personable. We like you, but technology is what's required to be on this job, and you don't have that skill. And so I know what it's like to be afraid of something, to step into the unknown and learn it and embrace it. And I smile because now this is the thing that I do in my business. So it is just an amazing thing when really understand it and embrace it.
And I want to highlight the thing for people, because when you say this is the thing that you do, most people would say, well, yeah, you do social media, you help people get comfortable with technology. Yes and no. The thing is connecting to the fear
Hmm.
of what it takes to, how many people were afraid of breaking their computer
Oh
when
yeah.
they started?
They're
And
gonna break the computer, they're gonna break the internet.
right, all those things, and it's an irrational fear
Hmm.
in many ways, but it is a fear. I'm afraid of doing it wrong. I'm afraid of, and so I can teach you all the things
Yes.
that you can do, and you can intellectually know it, but there's this thing that's standing in your way
Yeah.
that you're not expressing and you may not know exists, but when you see it and you hear it, you're like, that's it. And
Yeah.
so what I'm hearing, Taria, that you say is that for me, what drives me is one is the power of technology, but two is really touching people in such a way that
Mhm.
they can let their guard down,
Yeah.
so they can get comfortable with technology.
Hmm.
That they can feel like, oh yeah, I can do this. And so, and why? Because you remember the
Hmm.
fear.
Yeah, I remember the fair, and then there's also the deeper why, because I truly believe that we are all called to serve, and there
Mhm.
are people who are divinely appointed to us. And so, if we let that one thing, like technology, stand in our way, then we don't show up and shine. We don't get our light out there in the marketplace to attract the people who we are called to serve. And so that was the biggest thing for me, because like you said, I stayed in the what and the tools and all of the exciting things. Like I like gadgets and gadgets, all of that stuff. And I came to find out that that wasn't really it. It's good to have those things, and those things are necessary, but it wasn't the thing that my divine clients were looking for, or they're looking for in the marketplace. It's how to really show up in such a way and then get their messaging out there that would allow them to attract, their divine people. And I wanted to go back to something, Suzanne, that you said earlier. And I think for all of us, we really do start there when we're asked to share our why. So in the beginning, our why really, we start to think about ourselves. So what is it that you want? Time, freedom, more money, the ability to travel, all of this stuff. And you are so right, because those things are personal to us. But when I take a look at people who do it right, the influencers out there, they're able to paint a picture that's inclusive
Mhm.
of who they're taking on the journey. People are able to see themselves in them and say, you know what, that's my person. That's the person that inspires me to do better, or inspires me to go on a particular journey. So
Like,
Mhm, go ahead.
because I see myself in them, right?
Exactly.
I want to jump into the next thought that we have is, what is it about your why that has people interested
Hmm.
in what you do? And it's such an interesting thing, because our why is so subtle. There was something that you said that really highlighted this part of the question for me, is you said that people aren't interested in my social media and the gadgets, the gadgets, the how-tos. However, this is the interesting thing. When you talk to people, they'll tell you, yeah, I need to know about the gadgets, the gadgets,
Hmm.
this, the that. That's what they articulate.
Hmm.
And I really want to highlight this so everyone really gets it. So when people come to me, they're like, I want to learn about speaking. I want to learn to speak. Da 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 da. And that's what they want, and that's what they say. However, that's not the reason that they will choose me.
Yeah.
And this is where I want you to get clear, because people know what they want, they know what they need, and they want to find out how to do what they need, but that's not why they choose you.
Hmm.
And that's the craziness
Yeah.
that we
You
get
know,
caught in.
It's so interesting that you said that because you remind me of a particular client. And I have to admit, when I first started working with this client, I was a little intimidated. How many of you have ever felt that way? That you have a client, acquired a client, but sometimes in your mind you think it's like, oh my gosh, can I really fulfill, on the promises? Can I really step up to the plate and serve this client? So a little bit intimidated, a little bit, a whole lot, not a little bit, but a whole lot in my mind around this particular client and how to serve. And until one day we had a really interesting conversation, and he said to me, I've invested in countless programs
Mm-hmm.
and done, many things, attended trainings, conferences. And so I know the stuff and I know I have the stuff. But what you bring to the table is something that I'm not getting anywhere. And he said, you actually make me want to do the work.
Mm-hmm.
And so I find in working with you, I'm getting all of these things done, whereas I've been putting it off and delaying. So it's like that motivator to move forward and do it. And I found that really interesting that he would say that. And then I started to smile like, oh my gosh, that's the why. That's the why. And he's able to see it. And so it's really good when you know what your why is, and then when others could confirm for you what they're getting when they work with you. That gives you the opportunity to know that you are on track with displaying your why, and people could see it. And that's, like you said, that's a secret sauce, that's the thing that attracts people to your brand.
What I really want to highlight is that people don't know that. So
Hmm.
they're going to ask you. So notice people say, what do you do?
Hmm.
And you answer, what do you do? And then they might say, oh, tell me more. And then you answer how you do it. And then they walk away.
Hmm.
And you're wondering, you asked me what? You asked me how, you seem interested. So what happened? What happened is you didn't move them.
Hmm.
And
Exactly.
and that's why I really want to highlight it, is that we can't even articulate it, but we can feel it.
Hmm.
And one of the things that Simon Sinek writes in his book that is so powerful is he says the place that the why exists, we don't have language for.
Mm.
It's that emotional place in our
Yeah.
brain, the play part in our brain that feels, and the part in our brain that doesn't access
Yeah.
language as easily. And so that's why when you tell a story and you evoke emotions and you paint a picture of this thing that people can't put language to, but
Yeah.
it's the thing stuck between the the what and the how, right? What do you do and how do you do it? And then in between there's this gap of, I don't know, I know what and I know how, but I don't know why I'm not doing it.
Mhm, mhm.
It is in there that people go, when you say it, they go, yeah, 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 that's it for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, 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 that's it. So I remember, I know for myself, when I tell the story on stage about the little girl who gets embarrassed in front of the room, who knows she has a message in her heart, she wants to speak, but she's afraid to. And for 38 years, she hides out and speaks to one-on-one and does really well. But every time invited to do anything bigger, she becomes a little girl again. That's Suzanne.
Mhm.
And and every time I tell that story, people know what they want and they know that they need to speak, but they don't know this. They don't have language for this thing that's in between. And whenever I tell the story about being afraid to write on stage, being afraid to memorize things because I
Mhm.
know I'm going to forget, I know I'm going to get discombobulated, being afraid to mess up, coming to the stage with all my perfection and feeling stressed and tight. All those things, that's why people choose me.
Yeah.
And because really, when I say I want people to step outside the box, give up their need to be perfection, be their authentic, transparent self, and know how to get to that place, that's why I'm chosen. But no one knows that when
Mm-hmm.
you walk into the room
Yeah.
until you articulate it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it's not an easy thing to articulate. And you can't say, well, I know you're afraid of being in front of the room, and I know da da da, da, and I can tell that you can't. People be like, who are you?
You have just offended everyone in the room. Quickest way to clear the room.
However, when I tell it through my own journey and my own story,
Mm-hmm.
hearts go down and they go, she's talking to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And and when I say this is why I do what I do, people are like, she's talking to me.
Mm-hmm.
Quietly, privately. And then you get the people who come up after and go, man, you
Yeah.
were talking to me. That is why this part is so interesting. I mean, when we talk about what is it about your why that has people interested in what,
Mm-hmm.
when you do this part, people then come up and go, so tell me what it is you do exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Because now I've moved them, they're curious and they want more,
Yeah.
right? I know that when we met, Tria and I spent 30 minutes on the couch.
Mm-hmm.
I shared a part of my story with her,
Yes.
and I shared my journey and the ups, the downs, the highs, the lows. And at no point did I tell her what I did because
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't really important at the moment. When we were done, she was like, that's my person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it was so, like, you're talking about that. This is why it's so important, because I do remember that day, and one of the things that I felt in that conversation, it was like, oh my gosh, I'm not crazy. That's exactly what I felt. I'm not crazy, because I had this idea in my mind, and almost everyone that I shared the idea with, people were like, "Oh no, that can't be done," or "Why would you want to do that? That doesn't make sense." And I really wasn't getting the feedback that I was looking for. And until I met you and we had our conversation, I was able to say, "Oh my gosh, Suzanne gets me. She gets it. She gets exactly what it is I want to do." And you're absolutely correct. It was a no brainer. I didn't have to, go back home and, like how some people always tell you, let me sleep on it. Let me think on it. And they go through the mental gymnastics of trying to
Mhm.
figure out. And I want everyone to get this. Like, sometimes people go through mental gymnastics, and the mental gymnastics isn't really about the investment to work. People think that it's the investment. It's not that. What people are really trying to figure out is, do you really get them? Are you their person? And if they decide to take this journey with you, how will they fare in the end? Are you really the person to get them to where they want to be? And if people can feel that from you, then they'll find a way to work with you. But if that part is missing, then you get those objections, and you're like, oh my gosh, what is it? Is because you didn't create the relatedness, or they didn't see the connection.
Mhm. I remember working with a coach, and she said something so profound. She said, "You all think people hire you for your expertise and skills." And she goes, "People don't hire you for that." And it was like,
Hmm.
right? And she goes, "They hire you because of your walk."
Hmm.
Your walk. And it was the first time I got that there are thousands of people who do what I do. There are thousands of people who do what you do.
Hmm.
And the question is, why me? And I want you guys to think about that. Why me? Listen to what I'm saying. Why me? And what it is in your walk, you will find your why. And when I got that, it was, I need to stop selling my products and service up front, and really give people an opportunity to get to understand why this walk is so important to me, why this walk is so important, and how I understand why this walk is so important to you. And ultimately, we want very similar things. And you know, it's interesting because I've been on the phone all week and everyone is saying, I have something on my heart
Mm-hmm.
that I'm called to talk about. I have something in here that I need to share. And I'm tired of being boxed in. I'm tired of, you know, the Stephanie, the secrets, the stopping, the, you know, I'm tired of being closed in or put. They're tired because there's more in here.
Yeah.
And I'm always like, yeah, that's my people right there.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's not about the mechanics. Yes, we'll teach the mechanics so the mechanics access this thing, but that's not the thing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and like I said, that really right there is the secret sauce to great marketing in all aspects that you do. So,
Hmm.
Suzanne, I have another question. So, one of the biggest questions that we got coming through the challenge is, and I think we touched on this last week, but I have to bring it in again. There's a difference between the overarching story and and your other stories, because we all have plenty of stories. So, how do you discern when to use which one?
Mm. So it's interesting because when we think of why, we think of it as overarching.
Hmm.
But there's so many different whys because there's a why for this season, there's a why for last year's season, there's
Hmm.
a why learn this lesson,
Yeah.
why understand this, why understand that. And so it's hard to articulate that piece of information. And so when people say is I have the overarching story, and the overarching story is what we call your brand story, and it's a story that tells the world why you do what you do.
Hmm.
And it's the big story. However, underneath that story, you will notice that it's compiled of all these little stories that brought you along the journey. And so when people ask you what you do, and they're really asking why you do what you do, that's how
Hmm.
I hear it now. You tell that overarching story that gives them a picture of the journey and what fueled that journey, because that's really what it is. Then you're going to have a whole bunch of little stories, and they're the little stories. And I always say the little stories are the lessons that
Yeah.
you learn in the when you got bumped and bruised. It's
Hmm.
the lesson that you learned when life came down your street and knocked you over. It's a lesson you learned when you took the wrong turn and had to turn around and come back, and you were frustrated and angry that you wasted time. It's a lesson you learned in all these different things. And inside of every story, it's really the answer of why is this lesson necessary?
Mm.
Right? Why is, you know, we often ask this, how many of you said, why is this happening to me? Right? Same story, different color.
Yep.
Same story, different year. Why is this happening to me again? Well, that's a powerful question because you haven't learned the lesson and the purpose in there. So when we look at stories, stories teach the why so that you can access the lesson. And so when we talk about knowing and understanding the power of why, start with why. It's not just the overarching, it's what's in this moment for
Yeah.
who's listening, what's in this chapter for who's listening, what's in this season for who's listening. When I um, did all this stuff and failed, what's in there for me that answers the why? What am I supposed to pick up on my way back up? These are the important things that as entrepreneurs that we stick in our emotional toolkit.
Hmm.
And so that when our clients are stuck in places and spaces and they're banging their head against the wall, you can say,
Yep.
yeah, a lesson for you, and teach you the why behind what you're doing
Yeah.
so that you can free yourself up and get moving.
Yeah.
Why? They're all over the place. But we are taught to go, oh no, let me teach you another skill.
Mm-hmm.
Let me teach you what to do. Let me teach you how, blah, blah, blah. But until I understand why I keep repeating this same thing on different streets and different chapters and different colors, I'm still going to do it no matter how many skills you give me.
Yeah. So it is interesting that you say that, because I know for me, stay for a long time, staying in the what and staying in the how was my safe space.
Everyone's safe
Yeah,
space.
it was my safe space. And it really took understanding the power of vulnerability and to share, those real hard, tough, uncomfortable moments,
Yeah.
with people, those, like you said, those stories that really bring the lessons to life. And it takes courage to do that. And so I had to really learn to embrace, that concept. And it wasn't until I started doing that that I started to see the shift. So
Mm-hmm.
that's why I talk about it all the time, the hiding out. There's so many ways that we can hide out. We could hide out behind content. We could hide out behind, beautiful pictures and graphics. But are you really truly giving your audience and your people the opportunity to truly see who you are? And so the stories are really the insight to your journey, not just the beautiful things that happen on the journey, but the tough and hard things as well.
Mm-hmm. And so in our program we have this thing called ETR, earn the right.
Hmm.
Earn the right to be the guide, earn the right to be the coach, earn the right to be the mentor, earn the right. And 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 whenever people are stuck in the program, and I'll tell you, so for those of you who don't know,
Hmm.
the moment often the tears fall
Hmm.
because people are just about to see themselves. And they're
Hmm.
about to see who they be, how they show up, but most importantly, they're gonna get a glimpse of who they're required to become. I hope
Hmm.
you guys track it.
Hmm.
And this is the TR moment. And and it has nothing to do with your what you do,
Hmm.
it's our skill set. It has to do with what you need to learn in order to shift and become who you're destined to become, to actually be the guide you desire to be. And these are those why moments, because it's not the what, it's why am I here? Why is this the place I always get stuck? And for us, we say that when you earn the right and you have that breakthrough, that transformation, you now have something in your kit, because when your client gets stuck there
Yeah.
and you pull out that story, you give them peace of mind, you make them no longer feel alone, you make them believe that there's possibility for movement, and you make them feel heard, seen, and valued. And then you open the opportunity for trust, for vulnerability, and for transformation. And then you are able to help them move.